Welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. Join hosts Andreas and Tim as they explore the latest trends in the hospitality industry. This episode features Christine Angela Sevilla, Director of Development at Radisson Hotels in the Philippines. Dive into discussions on post-pandemic recovery, inflation impacts, personalized guest experiences, and the role of technology in hospitality. Don't miss out on this insightful conversation. Listen now to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast with my, co-conspirator, Tim. I kind of like that title. I'm officially gonna make that a thing, apparently. But today we have a really special guest in an industry that I think doesn't really get enough attention from the business side conversationally as it should, with all of the great things that are going on in the world right now. So before I go any further, Tim, I want to have you do the proper introduction for our special guest today.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm just I'm in a little bit of awe, so I'm not quite my normal free self, but we have the tremendous opportunity today to speak with Christine Angela Sevilla. Christine is the Director of Property Development, or Director of Development, and right now she's stationed in the Philippines, and she is working with Radisson Hotels, taking on an incredible opportunity to expand the brand throughout Southeast Asia, through property acquisition, property development, brand development within the region. Very, very exciting. And actually, when we were talking to Christina before the call, some of her past experience really resonates with me. Previously, she was with the Shangri-La chain. And those of us who've had the privilege to stay at a Shang will resonate with the tremendous focus on guest experience that those hotels bring forward. And I'm sure that Christine is bringing that energy and excitement to all of the projects that she's been doing. So this really, for us, in addition to Christine and her experience and having her here today, this is an industry, to Andreas's point, that we at Transform CX think is obviously going through some tremendous changes for a variety of reasons, right? We like to say it's all a pandemic, but let's face it, guest experience expectations change. That's just the nature of human beings, right? I can remember when an infinity pool was it, right? As long as you had an infinity pool, people could go. Now it's like everybody has an infinity pool. What's the next thing that's going to be exciting? And then, of course, that not every guest is the same. That's the other unique thing about the industry. I always use restaurants and hotels as the key point when we do consulting, and companies are always saying, but what is good customer experience, or what does that make? Or I want to wow a customer. Oh my God, heard that so many times. And I said, well, did you go to lunch today? And they go, well, what do you mean? And I said, that dining experience, is a wow opportunity for somebody. We expect food to be good. We expect our room to be clean. That's standard. What's the difference? And we can talk more about that on the call. So I don't want to talk all about, but Andreas, you want to tee up our first question for our amazing guest?
Yeah, that was like a 5-minute intro. So great job on that. But no, I think it's a really good topic. And Christine, thanks again for being here. And like even the customer experience, like Tim was just describing it, I look at it as guest experience. And when companies look at customers and they genericize it as, oh, it's customer experience, it's CX, it's like, no, it's patient experience, it's guest experience for, what we're talking about here in hospitality. And to Tim's point, the type of travelers, if you look at business travelers, like everything was on pause for a bit and now it's picking, back up. And there's other struggles that we'll talk about here, but think about the level of a business traveler coming to, one of your properties and the guest experience that they could have to make them feel much more productive, that the money they're spending to travel and stay and the level of comfort and productivity that has. Like, what are the hospitality industry trends that you see from a key challenges perspective that will help with sustaining travelers and guest experience in 2024?
That's actually a great question, Andreas, because in the hospitality industry, it's so wide and it's ever so changing. So you've mentioned as well, our key customers really are our guests, but a lot of times we also forget that we have stakeholders as well, which is our owners of our hotels that actually play a huge role in being able to provide the experience that the personalized experience and all of these things that we need to do to be able to stand out from the rest of the competition, right? So, when you ask about challenges, I think one of the greatest things that we need to look into is, inflation is here.
Yep.
Inflation in a sense that, post-COVID, we are trying our best to really be able to get back on track on how we did business and how we did, hotels and all of these things. Just right before it happened, because 2019 was really a banner year, especially for our region in terms of travel. When I say inflation, it's really hard because nowadays the cost of travel has gone up so much that
Agreed.
especially now, and there's also no signs of it going down or slowing down in the near future. So that's one challenge that we have, because that also in order for us to be able to serve, our guests need to get to, our hotels. So this is one of the challenges that we have. And the next as well would be the inflation in terms of, how we operate our hotels. So costs have gone up, your cost of goods, your utilities have gone up, but your rates haven't really picked up, or they don't pick up as fast as how your costs are actually, going up and even accumulating. And in that sense, that also affects what kind of service or offerings we are able to provide our guests. In terms of a luxury brand, there are a lot of intricacies that go into that service, which amounts as well to the cost. So how do we do that and be more consistent in our service when we still need to deliver a GOP? So this is one of the challenges as well in terms of speaking of inflation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I see it very similar to how you just described it, because if you think about, one, you have to have travelers there on property, right? Because then otherwise you have vacant rooms that are sitting, and there's a whole nother monetary financial impact in that respect, right? So just getting guests there, and then you have to attract the guests there. So there's marketing spend to attract guests, right? And then the guests, when they do come, with where inflation is at, they have less disposable income. So just getting to a property is a big challenge into its own. But then having the services that, again, to your point, to offset the operational costs and still be able to run a for-profit business and have enough profit coming in that stays on the cutting edge. So you're not just adding an infinity pool, as Tim was talking about earlier, because everybody will eventually do that. And the competition in the hospitality industry is pretty fierce. In my opinion, it's very fierce and complex to solve for. So having inflation where it's at, getting guests there, and then giving them the experience that they expect with a higher expectation, because again, inflation being high and the money they're spending, they want to be able to get a return on that investment in the level of comfort and things like that. It's a very, very complicated problem. You're absolutely right. Tim, would love to hear your thought-provoking insights.
I don't think there's anything left. No, but no, I mean, you're absolutely, I think about luxury brand versus non-luxury brand. And when I travel a lot for business, and I often book by cost, it's just that simple. And, it's sometimes I'm lucky that the luxury brand is in my cost range, and sometimes they're not. But it's interesting. One of my, just a personal observation, and I won't name the brand that I usually travel with, but sometimes I get a better interpersonal experience with the lower in brands than I do at the peak. And I'm not sure always why that is the case, but I remember traveling, and I was in Indianapolis, which I never go to. First time I ever stayed in this particular hotel for this brand, and it was one of the the low tier from brands. And I remember it's one of their things. If you're a premium customer, you're supposed to get a gift or points. I think it's pretty standard in the industry. But what they did is they had handwritten notes on a little bag for all their guests that they were coming that were at a certain level or above. And I think of that often. I mention that to people. The power of just that handwritten note is really impressive. And it's happened at different properties at different times. I remember one time it was the room attendant in a hotel that I had stayed at a couple of times with my family made it a point to say, thanks again for staying here. She remembered us, and there were a couple of minor things that we wanted different. And she took care of it before we even arrived. And you're like, wow, I mean, that was like, you remembered me as a guest, as a personal, and you remembered because I can't sit in your regular chair on the lanai because I have a back problem. So they put not as fancy a chair, but a much more comfortable chair for me. And so that type of stuff is really important, I think. And so this is one of the things that I think about. And as we talk to people in other industries, we see customers coming to a point where their expectation is not only cost or good, but also personal. There's this, you should know me and treat me like you know me. And when you do that, that's pretty amazing. When you can touch that button. I like to say for years, I used to say, we all have a button on our forehead that says, make me feel special. And when we're able to engage with that, that's what creates loyalty. That's what creates somebody like me walking around talking about a handwritten note from 15 years ago and saying how important that was, or an engineer in a hotel in New York who realized that I knew, anyway, people who go the extra mile and they do it because they don't have to.
Yes. And if I must say, right, because we talk about costs being higher, but these are the things that don't cost much. It doesn't really cost much to get a card and write something. So definitely that's where, we can differentiate ourselves in our hotels, is basically really focus on the people. And that basically also comes from, the operations itself, what we do for our people, because we are a people business, right? So the training that we get, the compensation, is it fair? Is it ethical? Are we hiring ethically? Is there balance in terms of the back of house operations? Because, a happy staff will make happy customers. It doesn't matter what brand it is. It doesn't matter if it's a 5-star, a 3-star. So it's really something that we can say that, it doesn't really take much cost to make someone stay or make them feel special.
I know. And it's funny, and we know each other through Arlene Durana, and for years I used to stay at one of the hotels that she managed, and I have my own little story about extraordinary customer experience. I traveled to Boracay, and as you know, you have to land on the other island, and I was at the Cataclan Airport. I think that's the one, right? And I'm waiting, but I wasn't staying at her hotel. I was staying at another hotel. I was going to go diving. But their transfer officer, which is essentially an extended bus bellboy who goes to the other hotel to bring the guests over, he saw me, he recognized me, and he came up to me and he said, Sir Tim, are you staying at our hotel? And I said, no, I'm actually staying at another hotel, but I'm waiting for them to show up. And he said, well, a couple of our guests are running late, so if you need it, I'll take care of getting you transported over to Boracay. Yes. And to this day, I tell that story because he didn't have to do that. And in fact, I wasn't even a client or customer of his. But of course, that night for dinner, I went over and I talked for 20 minutes about this. And I think he still works there. But it's that, again, that goes back to what you were just talking about, which when you have your employees who are happy and feel engaged and they don't have limits, right? They feel like every minute they're a part, they're emulating their brand and what they do, which is a big part of what we talk about. And I'm not selling here, but it's one of these things that we find a lot of companies will, beat themselves up on expensive customer service technology and all the rest of this stuff. And we're sitting there like going, but guys, have you talked to your employees? Right? When was the last time you asked your employees what works and what doesn't work? So.
Yeah. I think that's actually a good segue into the next question. I'd love to get Christine's thoughts on so everything that you just mentioned and everything that you guys just talked about right now. 100% I endorse it and concur with it. And so, what are the opportunities that you would see, Christine, with where the technology offerings that we have, and how could we operationalize it within, and how can you operationalize it within the hospitality industry with the challenges that you mentioned earlier?
That's a great question, Andreas. Really, for me, I think in hotel operations, personalization can be achieved through, the development of technology. It's really, we have hundreds of guests, thousands of guests for a hotel group that actually has at the moment 1,300 hotels all over the world. How do we personalize it that so every person that comes to our hotel feels that, oh, I am home, number one, and number two, this, for example, if I'm a repeat customer, they know what kind of pillow I like, and these
Exactly.
it's really a thing because some would, really recommend or they would commend us and say, hey, you remembered this small touch point, and it's really about using the systems and the technologies that we have to be able to really recognize a customer. What have they done in the past days? These things actually come to mind. And that's one opportunity that we can use to get to know our customers on a deeper level without making them feel like it's robotic, like there's still magic into it.
It's still human. It's still human, right?
Correct.
Now, I will say though, I may have to disagree just a little bit because everybody that I talk to that travels a lot, they're always like, I don't want a personal experience. I want you to treat me just like I'm, 1,000 other people, and I'm not special. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You nailed it. That's how people want to feel, especially when they're trying. Now, look, whether it's for business or it's for leisure, there's still, stresses or anxiety levels of whether you're getting on an airplane or like Tim and I coming from the US to Manila, right? And then we've got to, if we're not staying in Manila, we've got to go to, Boracay, for example. We use Boracay since Tim vacations there every other weekend, apparently. There's a high level of just travel anxiety. Even if you've been traveling as long as we probably all have, there's still a lot that kind of goes with it. And that's where I think that personalization that you're talking about is so key, because imagine the relief that you get when you walk into your property and to your point, the pillow is the pillow. You didn't even have to ask for it. The pillow is right. You were checked in online, so you can go straight to your room. Everybody's greeting you, so you have less, congestion at the front desk, unless there's someone who genuinely needs that time and attention, and the front of house staff is focused on them. I think it makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
Yes. And to add to that, right? The personalization doesn't really need to be, oh, it's Tim, oh, it's Andreas. The hotel just needs to know, oh, they've come a long way. Oh, they're traveling in the Philippines. So that must be really tedious, right? So then you leave something little, something small that actually makes a difference based on the expectation that they have on their stay. Just a little something. So
no, I think that's so one of the things that I think about, we like any technology or consulting company, we always have our pillars or our themes, and employees, we've kind of leaned in on three things. And I had the opportunity actually working with some of Andreas's teams in his previous job. He was managing large contact centers around the world, and so I did focus groups with about 1,000 people. This was during the pandemic, but the questions were, what are the things that drive people to either stay or leave? What is it that really leans in? And now these are not hotel jobs, but the theme was pretty consistent. One was compensation, and everybody goes, oh, everybody wants more money. And you go, well, yeah, I want more money too. But what was interesting in the theme, and I think this was really powerful, is people were like, look, if they're not in a sales job, they don't really get comped on doing a better job. And so how do we create performance-based, like to your point, so you think about those moments of truth, the old book from the chairman at SAS, and those happen at weird times, right? They're not always at where you think they're going to be. I mean, the front desk check-in in a hotel is generally a moment of truth. But it could be the condition of the room when I walked in, or the interaction I had with an engineer at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to find the gym, or whatever it is. And how do people, to your point, yes, we want people to do that because it's inherent in who they are, but also we want them to know that we value the fact that they did that. And so how do we create those moments and value and reward them for it? So compensation was one. The other one that we think is really, really important, and one that we lean in on a lot, is training. And, we work with a lot of companies that have over time kind of defaulted to the self-paced PowerPoint presentation is your training environment. And I think that's been a big miss by a lot of companies, because then again, the employees go, well, I spent 6 weeks in training. None of it really prepared me for the work, for the job. And you're smiling because, you know exactly where I'm going with this, because nothing prepares you for, well, I shouldn't say nothing. Those trainings don't prepare you for the annoyed New Yorker checking in at 2 o'clock in the morning and the room's not ready. That's a bad moment, or could be a bad moment. Now, personally, I've never been that New Yorker. Of course I have. I've been, when we're tired and frustrated, you can be there. But what I've always been amazed at in the industry is that the good people are amazing at having a high EQ, right? They have great empathy, but they have empathy for you without blaming the hotel or blaming their boss, right? Because it's so easy to go, yeah, you're right, the rooms suck, or the manager's bad, or you're right. But rather, I understand what you're doing. I understand you're also really tired. And let's get you in a room and let's get you taken care of as quickly as possible. And will that make you okay? And that de-escalation, that get to facts, manage to a solution, close it out, are really important skills. How do you guys, what's your approach to training people for those at Radisson?
At Radisson, we're very, very big on people, because that's part of the pillars as well in terms of how we do sustainable business, because we are a people business. So it's really important for us to be able to keep our staff and make them happy, not just, train them, but also upskill them. So this is something that for us, it's really important. And how that is because we not only have mandatory trainings, but we have different trainings that allow them to actually do not only trainings within their hotels. We have programs where they can switch to different hotels and then do trainings there as well. Maybe a different role, maybe the same role. And this is the things that we do for our people. In terms of, how do we recognize make them feel that they're contributing to the business? Usually, it's really important as a hotel guest for you to be able to recommend or leave a note and, give a feedback about somebody in the staff, because every morning we actually do a huddle and we meet with everybody and we read those notes to the staff, and they feel recognized and they feel that they contribute. And it actually also inspires the others to be able to do that. Right. I mean, in terms of compensation, we'd want to compensate everybody. We compensate everybody fairly. I would love to, give more, but it's something that also, I would love more as well.
Well, I think that's so important though. But again, going back to we're a people business, 100% agree with that sentiment, and the actions that you're taking right there and what you just described, that drives guest experience, right? So you have more sustainable business, more repeat business, customer lifetime value, guest lifetime value, more repeat business. Then that allows for, I usually say the utter P&L, but that allows for continued revenue to come in. So then you can spread that back with the people. But it's not just like Tim was saying on the results that he got from the large study he did. It's not just compensation. Compensation has to be, to your point, has to be fair. Like if you don't have fair compensation, it's extremely difficult to make it up on the other side. But balancing out fair compensation practices, but then giving what you just described, and it's funny, Christine, you just kind of casually described it, but there's so many businesses out there that we've seen completely miss what you just said, and that's making them feel important, making the staff feel important. So if you're a people business and your staff is the one that you invest in because the experience they drive to guests, then it's very symbiotic and repeatable for everything that I just described. So doing little things like huddles, doing positive reinforced acknowledgement. Again, if you go back and look at anxiety levels and figure out how do you reduce those anxiety levels with small little gestures like that, then you look at what happens after you had a team huddle. Was the for the janitorial staff, were they quicker to clean up the areas and make sure that they were cleanliness and presentable? And the cleaning rooms, was there a productivity? Were they able to clean one extra room in that time frame? There's ways you can measure all of this, but just starting that recognition is so vitally important that I think tons of companies have lost centricity around. It's all about the employees first and foremost.
Well, I also love the upskilling conversation because, again, people want a career, people want to know, and particularly, as you're probably very aware, our younger generation, as I sit at the other end of the spectrum here, they're very interested in promotion. In fact, we struggle with that sometimes. People are like, why did you leave your last job? Well, I haven't gotten promoted. You've only been there 4 months. Well, I didn't get promoted in 4 months. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to process that. But it's part of the theme. And so we're kind of in what we used to call in martial arts, the McDojo, right? You got to have red belts, all these little belts, but there are levels of achievement that people are achievement and measurable achievement is really important. But we could probably talk for an hour on this or more, actually, Christine, and love to have more conversations on it. But as we come up to the end of our time, if you could think of if you had a magic wand and you were empress for a day and you could change one thing, what would be the thing that you would want to change, either in the industry or wherever?
That is okay. So I've had time to reflect about this, actually, Tim, and I must say that if there's something that I can do to change, is to bring the Filipinos back home.
Yes.
Because number one, we all know, right, that the number one export of the Philippines is labor. And who are those? So we have So I've looked into it, and we have 2.3 million working outside of the Philippines, a lot of them are working in the hospitality industry. Yes. And I've recently been in a cruise across the Mediterranean, like a few days. I just got back a few days ago, and I've realized that the Filipino people actually have world-class talent. Mm-hmm. And we are so we are known for our hospitality. We care from the heart. It's easy to train us because it's innate in us. But these guys, they work outside of the country just because they do not get the proper compensation. But imagine if if I had a wand, and imagine if things could happen in a perfect world. Then we can work with the government to actually work on these things, because tourism in the Philippines is the low-hanging fruit.
Big time.
You've got the people, you've got the most amazing islands that are not destroyed by nature. We don't have over tourism yet. So if we can work on how we can do tourism better in the Philippines, provide better access, provide better destination marketing. I mean, Tim, I think you mentioned that you scuba dive. I'm an avid scuba diver as well. And it's one of the, we've been awarded consistently as, one of the best dive destinations in Asia Pacific. And these things, we still get one of the lowest numbers of tourist arrivals in the Philippines. So yes, please go ahead. Sorry.
No, not to cut you off, but I think you're right on with something, and there's a couple of pieces to that I think are really interesting. One, a number you may not know, but I just heard last week, is that actually over the last 30 years, one of the great things that happened in the Philippines was the evolution of the contact center. And people kind of go, well, what does that mean? And I go, well, what it means is that you've got 30 million people in the Philippines who are directly or indirectly earning foreign currency without having to leave the country. And cities like Dumaguete and Cebu to some extent, but definitely Dumaguete, Davao City, Eastwood and Manila have exploded because of this. Of course, we laugh. I tell people it's an upside down city, and they go, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Well, if you go at noon, all the restaurants are closed." And they go, "What?" But if you go at 2 o'clock in the morning, everything's
Yes.
bustling, right?
Yes.
So, but to your point, and both Andreas and I have spent a lot of time in the Philippines, and I constantly pump it up with people. But to your point, access is a big deal, but I will say I just found out. I was in October and I happened to be flying someplace with United Airlines, and I heard the gate agents talking about the direct flight to Manila. They had the
Yes.
first one the night before. So you have airlines like United flying direct now. And people go, "Oh, it's such a long flight." And I go, you fly from Europe, or you fly to Europe from here. I live in San Francisco. And, that's a 13, 14-hour flight. I said, that's exactly how long it takes me to get to Manila. In fact, I guess a direct flight might be it's about that, 13 and a half hours. And, you go, and then people go, "Well, okay, but, what's there?" And I think to your point, the WOW campaign, that was a big deal. The Manila, it was the Philippine marketing campaign for a long time, I think fell short. Because, for example, when I see like these beach ratings every year or dive locations, and the Philippines isn't even on the list, and I just, you just sit there and you shake your head and you go, there's 7,104 islands at high tide, and you have every flavor that you want. You can stay in a 6-star hotel, or you can stay in a hostel on the beach for $4 a night, and everything in between. And until you've, I could go on and on. Yeah,
No,
it's just beyond. I'll never forget. I tell this people all the time. I had the opportunity to. If you've heard of Meninding Island, Christine, it's an island about 25 kilometers west of Boracay, and it's the first. It was an island. Was the first lighthouse built in Southeast Asia, right after the Spanish-American War, and we became the landlord for a while. And they built a lighthouse there, and then years ago it was automated. But that island has a beautiful coral lagoon around it, and we went out there to dive. And it's a village with like 40 people, one well, one cow, 1,000 chickens, a couple hundred goats, and they grow kelp and dry it. That's their entire production, and they sell it. And they probably make less than $100 a month income as a village. And the most incredible diving I've ever done in my life. They have a beautiful wall there. You could see 200 feet to the bottom, clear water. And here's a place where I remember we slept on the beach overnight there, and there's zero electric light. So there's no light to interfere with everything you're seeing, and just a clear sky. And you're just like, this is a magical experience. And people talk about all these places and they get over tourism, which to your point, but I love that as your magic wand. I think that's a beautiful one. I think the rest of the world would be sad because, who would be the ones with the smiles in the hotels and in the hospitals that we've all come to expect. And that's actually a funny thing too. I mean, I speak a little Tagalog, not enough other than to embarrass myself. But I remember being in Saudi Arabia, and the tea boys in the office were, Filipinos. And I remember doing a magandang umaga to one of the guys, and I thought he was going to fall down because obviously he wasn't expecting it from me or in that location. But just the power of that, they become such an integrated part of the global economy that we don't realize it sometimes. But I really appreciate you saying that, Christine. Yeah. And as we close, is there anything you'd like us to do? Maybe talk less. That would probably be a big piece of guidance for us.
No, actually, I really enjoyed our conversation. I mean, I really would, love to talk more. And there's a lot of things to say about the hospitality industry as a whole, and even more in the Philippines, right? Because for me, I think we deserve our spot as well. Yeah. And there are, the Philippines is a growing market, and it's actually, in our group, we're performing really well in the Philippines in terms of our growth, because, the Filipino people are starting to recognize, the better, things in life, and that's already a good sign.
Right.
So, but thank you. I mean, for me to give us a spotlight like this, and for us to be heard in that way is also something that, it's very appreciative for us.
Yeah. Well, Christine, we're really happy to have you.
Hang on, because I've been trying to say something for like 10 minutes, but Tim wouldn't stop. So remember 10 minutes ago when you shared your magic wand? So one, I think you're, again, just spot on with it. And it's kind of the same thing that we were talking about earlier in the hospitality industry of just getting the guests there. And to your point with native Filipinos, the opportunities, they're chasing the opportunities. That is also going back to the employee experience we were talking about, that Tim was talking about, of how do you get people to stay, right? It's the same concept. So I think I see the opportunity the same way. Like, once people like Tim and I have been all over the world, and we love places all over the world. So I don't want to sound too, I lived in Manila for a little over a year as well. But I got to be able to see and be a part of the culture that you're talking about. Not everybody gets that opportunity. So we've got to figure out, how do we create that opportunity? Because when they see that, that's when all of the things that you just described, I think, start taking hold. So you definitely have our commitments. And if you can't tell, we're non-paid advocates, because we know exactly what you're talking about, of the potential in the Philippines. And I do think there's a huge amount of potential there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Christine, thank you so much for being here. And you inspired me to maybe, do we want to, so one of the things we're always thinking about, and I see this industry as so important, and it's a global industry, obviously. One of the things that might be interesting is, do we create kind of a conversation, maybe starting with you, and then maybe you can expand it to some of your co-conspirators within the industry, to say, how do we drive this bigger conversation around hospitality and tourism, because it is changing. I mean, there's going to be more technology involved. People are doing self-check-in. Some people love it, some people hate it. I like it personally, because I'm that kind of traveler, like, just don't bother me, take me to my room. But at the same time, I do love that personal touch too. And sometimes, to your point, the personal touch is the thing that costs the least. I mean, just imagine, you just get, as I check in, you can geofence, and the app pops up and says, "Hey, Tim, thanks for, arriving on the property. Do we need anything from me?" And you could do that with technology. It's the same as, and obviously that's what people are doing more and more. I don't know that we'll ever get to the fully robotic hotel where I don't see anybody, but if I'm a business traveler, that's maybe okay with my expectations. If I'm there as a resort guest, I want a different experience. But anyway, I would love to grow this conversation more. And two possible paths I could see, maybe we'd love to do maybe more podcasts around both comments. One is the evolution of the industry that you're in, but I'd also loved your last comment. So how do we help you? And maybe we create another conversation around the strength of the Philippines, the need, the opportunity, that a little bit of a tourism promotion thing, but I would love to do it. Both Andreas and I have great stories to tell about my experiences there. I would say I can't think of a bad experience I've ever had there. Really, I can't. And I've probably been the time where I wasn't the best guest either, for different reasons. So it would be fun to do that. And if you were open to it, it'd be interesting to maybe brainstorm around how we might take both of those paths a little bit, if you were interested.
Of course, I would love to. It would be my pleasure. This is a personal advocate for me. It's just a development job is actually something that helps me also contribute in my own way.
Wonderful.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. So we can keep the conversation going.
You are awesome, and you're an awesome guest, and we are so excited that we got to meet you, and we're hopefully and very excited to continue the conversation. Thank you so much, Christine. Andreas, you want to close out, say goodbye and close out for us?
Yeah, I can talk now. All right, correct. So thanks again for the great conversation, Christine. Yeah, everything Tim just said, I fully co-endorse as well. Great conversation. You can definitely tell how passionate you are. And you can probably tell how passionate we are, which is why we talk so much. But hey, I appreciate everybody listening. And hey, one last plug, check out the Philippines. And there's so many different things to be able to do there. Reach out to us and Christine, obviously, if you guys are interested, and we'll figure it out. But thanks for listening to another Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast.
Thank you all.